Oh, Shkoya. Okay, so we're starting to record. We're holding in the 14th volume of Tzurba Rabbanon, Hilchas Chaim. Thank you very much, Yosef, for the water. And we started last week, the beginning of Shir Zion, which is really Hilchot Iker and the Tafel, which is you have a primary food and you have a subordinate food. And what bracha do you make? So we said you make a bracha on the primary food. We had an interesting Mishnah. The Mishnah said they used to eat these fruits that were very sweet. Because of the sweet fruit, you had to eat something salty. If they ate something salty, they had to eat bread, right? And we said that the bread would be pater under the salty food. You make a bracha on the salty food, right? So the example was anchovies. So if you do the anchovy, make a shahakal on the anchovy, and you can eat as much bread as you want for the anchovy, as long as your whole intention is to eat the anchovy. You don't have to make a hamotzi. We saw you should do netilat yadayim. You should wash without a bracha netilat yadayim. You wash, but you can make no hamotzi, and you'll eat the bread, and it's going to be covered under the anchovy. That's where we looked at last week. Okay, so it was, and you can take a look at 239, page 239 in the Tzurba, and that's the halacha and the Shulchan Aruch over here. Kol shu ikar the email tefela, mevarach al ikar poter et tefela. Bein bracha shelifneya, bein bracha shachareya. In that case, that the ikar is the anchovy. I don't want the bread. I want to eat anchovy. I just can't eat anchovy without something to take away the saltiness. Yeah, if that would be the case. Yeah. If it's very salty herring that you can't eat the herring without a cracker, then you make a shako on the herring, and the cracker is potter under that. Now, give me a minute. Right? Just this is being reviewing last week. We didn't even start anything new yet. Okay. Even if it's bread, shouldn't hurt him. Since it is the tafel, that is a beferish Shulchan Aruch. And last week we saw on the Yalkut Yosef that he made one exception. He said, this is true only if the person has no desire to eat the bread, but he only eats the bread because of the saltiness of the fish. But if he also would enjoy the cracker, or he would enjoy the bread too, it's just nice, good bread, then we can't say that he's eating it as a tafel to the dog maliach. Rather, he's eating it also to enjoy it, and that would now require a separate bracha. We also saw that. What's the story if he didn't make a bracha on the bread? He didn't make a motzi, but he ate tons of bread. Does he make a birkat hamazon or not? What did we come out last week? What did we say? And he says he does recite birkat hamazon because the way the Moran Yishon Tzion is learning, and we'll see it's going to be a machloket, the way the Achronim are learning, but Moran Yishon Tzion learns that you would have to say because it doesn't. You don't have to make the bracha rishona on it, but it doesn't mean there's no bracha on it. And since you ate it, you still have to say a bracha achrona on it. Okay, we're going to get more into that later today's shir. So that was just a little bit of a review on the extending of how far the ikar b'tafel goes. And you can eat bread technically without having to make a hamotzi, as long as it's a tafel to the anchovies. Now we're going to go into a different din of ikar b'tafel. We're on page 240. This is where I'm mixing my food, and I'm mixing food with a little bit of grain inside there. Grain is your wheat, your barley, your spelt, your oat, your rye, the stuff you usually make mizanot, and if you make it into a bread, it's a hamotzi, right? And schita, the sa'ira are part of the shivas minim. The others three are not, but they still have the status of bread and mizanot. Okay, so says the Mogin Avraham. How do you know what is the primary component? I have a mixture of food. So how do I know what's primary or not? What? Okay, so but let's say I'm having a food in front of me right now. Okay, so whatever is the majority amount, that is the main thing. Okay, so let's take a look. For example, let's use baksh as our example. What's baksh? Baksh is rice. It has some cilantro, and it has some meat. Maybe they put in some liver, chicken liver. I don't know, meat, whatever they put, some mushrooms or something inside. But what's the majority of the of baksh? Rice. So what's the bracha on the whole thing? Mizanot. That is the bracha, because the majority, the rov, is that.
The example I was thinking of, the cornbread has wheat in it, but little amount.
Okay, so that's the next case. Take a look at the next case in the Mogen Avram. Anything that has a mixture from the 5 grains, remember your wheat, barley, spelt, oat, and rye. Then it goes after them. Meaning, if it has in it wheat, then wheat becomes a major component. Okay, we have to see how far this goes. Okay, Uvilvad, and he says, mamish, there has to be some substance there. But if he just mixes it until it's soft, then he recites a shahakol on it. So let's just take a look in the Yalkut Joseph as he explains this. We're looking here, if you open up to page 278, in Halacha 9, if any of the 5 species of grain is mixed with another food, in order to add its flavor, meaning you're adding it for mamashas, for the flavor of it, the grain is now considered the principal ingredient, even if it's a minority. Therefore, the blessing for the mixture is going to be borei minei mizonot. Therefore, the proper blessing for any cake is borei minei mizonot, even though the majority is sugar and eggs. Still, since you put flour in there, it's going to become borei minei mizonot. For Rishona. Same thing for the Ma'en Shalosh also. He says Ma'en Shalosh. We're going to see the percentage. We're not going to get into the percentage today, but there is a percentage that you have to reach in order for that to happen. But the rule is correct if the grain is added to the mixture for its flavor or to make it a more filling food. It's there for mamosha, so it has to be there. It makes the food flavor. It makes the food a food. But if someone adds grain or flour to a food only to make it stick together, or to give it color, or to give it a smell, but it doesn't give it any flavor, then it's not considered the principal ingredient.
We did the fish.
Fish or schnitzel.
Okay, we're going to get into schnitzel and that also. But what he's saying right now is that this is an example when you make burgers. Anybody makes burgers, they know you throw in breadcrumbs. Okay? Take the ground meat, you throw in breadcrumbs, you put in spices and stuff like that. So what's the breadcrumbs coming for? It's coming to make the stick together. But we're not really needing it there for the flavor. We're not really needing it there for anything else. We don't really need it there. We just need it to stick together, right? So that's a case where you're going to ignore the flour, the breadcrumbs, and you're just going to make a shahakal on it. Okay? Meatballs. Lole kebab. Okay? You throw breadcrumbs in them. And yet that is not considered mizonot because it's not there for the actual flavor and stuff like that. Okay, that is the distinction when it comes to grain. If it's there for something, it's going to become mizonot. It's going to take over. It's going to become primary. If it's not there for something, it's just there to help bind the food or give it a color or something like that, then it's not going to be counted as a primary ingredient unless it's the majority ingredient. Okay. Okay. So schnitzel is good, but we're going to get into schnitzel. I believe he gets into it shortly. He gets into schnitzel on page 247, breaded foods. We're going to get into that. So gefilte fish is an example, right? Gefilte fish is primarily fish. They throw in breadcrumbs for a binding agent to keep it together, right? That's why your Pesach gefilte fish is a little bit different. Sticking together than the rest of the year because they're using matzah meal versus flour or whatever else they're using. So it sticks together differently, right? So the bread is just there. The breadcrumbs or the flour is just there to doing as a binding agent. Okay. If you're throwing in the breadcrumbs or the flour for flavor, then it's going to change. It's going to come as an on. Okay, we're going to talk about schnitzel shortly. Schnitzel short. Okay. Now, the Tzurba gets in to the halacha when you have two foods that are eaten separately. What is the halacha where both ikar and tefel are distinguishable and significant? Okay, I have two foods. You can see both of them. All right, so I made a fruit salad, not chopped up finely. They're cut up, but they're cut up. You can still see them separately.
Mushroom and the beans.
No, what's in the fruit?
Together.
I have a dama fruit and I have an eighth fruit, and I have a mixture. So what do I do now? Is there an ikar there, tafel? There are two ikars. So what is it? What's the bracha? So he says over here, he brings to the Mishnah Brura, Haroiv hu ha'ikar. Whatever is major. So if there's one more apple, that's it. It's all ha'etz. You don't make adama.
You're gonna see them counted, right?
It says big pieces, small pieces.
Haroiv hu ikar. Says the Mishnah Brura, if you come in and ikar nami bata roiv azlinan. We go after the majority. If there's one more apple piece, then there is a bananas. It's all ha'etz. That's Mishnah Brura. The Shara Tzion brings from the Chaya Adam, and the Chaya Adam's opinion is, if each one is distinguishable, they're big pieces, then you should make a separate bracha on each of them. We don't just go with the rov. Okay, and Rav Wozner in the Shevet HaLevi says it doesn't make sense. Just because I have one more piece of apple, everything becomes eight. Just one piece of apple makes all the difference. I can see the apple, I can see the banana. Says Rav Wozner, I have to make a separate bracha on each. It's there. There's two acres here. There's an apple and a banana. Okay. What is the halacha brura? This is Rav David Yosef Shlita. What does he say? Okay. He says, if you ever have a question, what is the roiv? Right? I'm not sure. I have one more apple, one less apple. I don't know. You should do such. You should separate them. If you're not sure which is the rov, which is not the rov, then you should separate them, make a separate bracha. So it seems to be Eitz and Adam. Let's take a look in the Yalkut Joseph. Take a look here on page 285. Let's take a look at page 285 in the Yalkut Joseph, English edition. He writes here, fruit cocktail often contains pieces of tree fruits and pieces of ground fruits. Since each fruit is visible as a separate piece, and the person eating the cocktail considers both types of fruits as equally important, he must recite separate barachot for the tree fruits and the ground fruits. Who does he sound like? Sounds like the Chai Adam. And he says you have distinguishable pieces. You should make separate barachot. He actually says it beferish over here in the footnote. We turn to page 286. Take the page of 286. The third paragraph on the footnotes on the left column, right? Disagree with the Mishnah Brura. The Mishnah Brura says if you have one more piece of apple, everything comes to eight. He ruled that it's necessary, following the ruling of the Hayy Adam. 286, right over here. This page 286. Yeah, and the bottom, the third paragraph, right before potato salad, right over there. So he says it beferish. Ruled like the Hayy Adam. That what? If you have two distinguishable pieces, you should make two separate brachot. Okay? They're separated pieces. They're a fruit salad with big pieces of banana and big pieces of apples. You should make two separate brachot. That's the Moran Shon Tzion. Kamuvadia is going like the Hayy Adam. He make two separate brachot. Okay. Yeah.
Let's see the salad.
Yeah.
The avocado salad chunks.
Uh-huh.
I said to someone, make two brachot.
Uh-huh.
He says, no, it doesn't have to be because it's there's no chashivut. Chashivut is only if it's like meat or chicken.
Uh-huh.
But according to this, the Hayy Adam and the
As long as it's distinguishable. Yeah. Yeah.
It is distinguished.
Then you should make a separate bracha. Yeah. Yeah. If you look at the next page on 287, finely chopped fruit cocktail on the bottom there. If someone makes a fruit cocktail, so a fruit salad, and it's finely chopped, so even the Hayya Adam would agree that at this point you make one bracha. The two brachot is only when they're large enough to be picked out easily. They're distinguishable. Then you make two brachot. But even if there's one more apple and now it's all finely chopped, then it all becomes ha'etz. This is the Haman Shon Tzion Hayya Adam explaining how to make the brachot. Okay, so that's on Ikra V'Tafel when it comes to big distinguishable pieces. Now we're going to come into, you have two, that paragraph and the paragraph there. Yeah. Okay. Now, so if Sion, you take a look at the later on, if you take a look on that same page 286, the right column, he says Maran Shon Tzion actually is a steer to himself, because when he came to a fruit cocktail, he said make two separate brachot. But when he came to rice and meat, he said you only make one bracha. So on the bottom here, he writes to reconcile the stira. It seems that there's a difference between fruits and rice with meat. In a fruit cocktail, a piece of peach and a piece of pineapple are equally important. There's no basis to say that one fruit is a principle. Therefore, you take each one out, you make a bracha. Regarding rice and meat, rice is a principal food here since it's the part that's serving that fills one's stomach. Therefore, it should only be one bracha. So it's a difference when it's fruits that's mixed together and if it's rice and meat that's mixed together. That's what he wants to say on the bottom here, because fruits are always separate, right? And each fruit is important. Therefore, you should make two separate brachot. Rice and meat, he wants to say that by nature, the rice is the ikra because the rice fills you up. The meat's just there for flavor. Therefore, it's one bracha.
Maybe in regards to batch, but in regards to Shpolo, because
right. So that's a big piece. We'll get into the big piece shortly. You're right. Well, Shpolo, the bigger piece means.
Doesn't work.
Bach is just Mizunah. Okay. Now, what about stuffed cabbage? Page 244 in the Tzurba. Stuffed cabbage, stuffed zucchini. Oh wait, I skipped. I'm sorry. I skipped. My bad. Page 242. Okay. 242. I got excited. I like the picture. Page with the picture. Okay. Page 242. Okay. All right. Listen to the Bet Yosef. Bet Yosef writes, Katav HaKolbo, the Kolbo writes, that respect to jam. They used to have a jam, like a jelly, that they used to put it on thin wafers. Those wafers are secondary to the jam. I want to eat the jam, but I just can't eat just jam from the jam jar. I put the jam on the wafer so my hands don't get sticky and I can eat it nicely. Since, yeah, you're gonna get into ice cream cones in a minute, right? And those wafers are only used to fix the jam to them, so they don't get sticky. Therefore, what? The wafer is secondary, and the bracha of the jelly of the jam exempts the wafer, right? So you don't make a bracha on the cracker, you don't make a bracha on the wafer, you just make a bracha on the jelly. Says the Shulchan Aruch, he brings down la halacha l'maisa, markechet, I think that's the way you read it. Shemanichan al rikikin dokim, that you put it on thin wafers. Otam rikikin havu tfeilah lemarkechet. They are considered subordinate to the jam. Shadavar yadua she'em et kavanim le'ochel lechem. I don't want to eat the cracker. I want to eat the jam. Therefore, the bracha is shahata.
The mezonah is not always the ikar.
No, that's the thing. It's only if it's there as a flavor, just coming as I want that in my food. If I'm like I'm eating the anchovy, I want the anchovy, but I can't eat the anchovy without the bread, so the bread is considered the tough. Okay, very important. However, says the Magen Avraham, Ava b'medinot elu shemanichan hamarkahet al hadovshanin Shitovim lemachal. They put it on honey wafers, not on any wafers, sweet wafers. Meaning these wafers you would eat anyway. They're not plain old water wafers. They're good tasting wafers. Im ken kavanato gam ken lachlitam lachilat hadov shanim umevarich alehem. Then you should make a bracha on the wafer. Okay. Now, this Magen Abraham is now going to be. What does he mean by this? Okay. What does he mean that you mevarich on the wafer? You understood him to say just the wafer, right? The Mahatzit HaShekel doesn't say that. Now, the truth is, I usually, I know the Tzurba is not going to like me for saying this. I'm usually very fond of the way they set up the halachot in the Tzurba Rabbanon. However, this halacha, I feel like they set it up more for Ashkenazim than they did for Sfaradim, at least according to Chacham Ovadia. This halacha that's coming up now, because the Magen Abraham said that if you're having nice flavored wafers, you make a bracha, muvarich alehem, right? And then he brings down the Mahatzit HaShekel. Mahatzit HaShekel says, "Umikomalkum tzarich levar gam kein al markechet." You also have to make a bracha on the jam, because he's saying there's no ikar of a tuffle here. You want both. You like the jam, you like the wafer, so you got to make two brachot, right? That's what he's saying.
So these ingredients are separate or they connected? So let's say you're buying the cookie sandwich with like an Oreo kind of thing.
So you're saying Mishnah Berurah. You're saying Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says if it's cooked together, baked together, then it becomes one item, one unit. That's it. Then it's one bracha. But if it's not cooked together,
not necessarily.
If it's not cooked together, it's two separate brachot.
Just spread it and put them together.
That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. If you're spreading, put together, make two different brachot. It's only if it's cooked together, it makes one bracha. We're going to see in a minute or two. Chacham Ovadia said that's not true. He said that's not true. It doesn't make a difference if it's cooked together or not. Right now, is there ikar v'tafel? If there's ikar v'tafel, then there's one bracha. Let's go for a second back to the anchovy case. I'm going to show you where he says it beferish on the bottom over here. Take a look at page 274. Right? Page 274. He writes. Yeah, the Alka Joseph, 274. I'm sorry. Look at anchovy on a cracker. You see that footnote over there? It's common nowadays to be served hors d'oeuvres, however you read this, including anchovies, hors d'oeuvres, okay? Including anchovies on herring or crackers. If someone eats the cracker only in order to be able to withstand the saltness of the fish, and otherwise you eat the fish without the cracker, then the cracker is subordinate. We already know this. If he wishes to enjoy the cracker as well, then what? He must recite the blessing of Borei Minim Mizanot on the cracker and no blessing on the fish. Right? That's like this case of the jam and the wafer. Not like the Mahatzit HaShekel that says you say two brachot. Right? He says here, Beferish, now goes, I'm going to show you another place when it comes to the ice cream, the ice cream sandwich. This principle is going to show up again. Okay, and we're going to go through it at that time. But that's our halacha, is that one of them is an ikar. There's no two ikars in this case. It's either one or the other. It's either the jam over the wafer or the wafer over the jam. It's no two brachot. But the Mahatzit HaShekel said to make two brachot, and the Ashkenazim go like that. Okay, so now take a look in the Piskei Teshuvot. The Piskei Teshuvot says as follows. Gadol b'zeh, right? The definition is as follows: Kol davar she'ena derech la'achol oto levad. Right, this is Ashkenazic derech for this, but we can also learn from it. Let's see. So this is true for everyone. If you only want to eat one of them, but you need to have the second piece there just because that's the way to eat it, so then it's one bracha. Because you only want one, that's your kavanah. You have to go with what's the primary. Okay, now he says, so matzos type of crackers and other type of mizanot. If you eat it together with basar, with meat, prusot basar, pieces of meat. What's this? Nikanim? Nikanim? Niknik? What's this? Niknik. What? Deli meats? Like pastrami and stuff? Okay. Dagim, dagim meluchim, l'sugehen, salty dagim l'meneim, yerokos, vegetables, prusas yerokos, pieces of vegetables, the salad yerokos, or a vegetable says, the beitzim, egg, the chokioitz, man. The whole elu, haderech la'achshav gama toisvas la'ikar la'achila v'l'sviya. You eating each one is also, the egg is important, the meat's important. So what do you do, says the Piskei Teshuvot? Yivarch aleim v'tzaem mikol min benifrad. Then you're going to make a bracha separately on each. B'tchila minei mizanot, v'achar kach minei adama, v'achar kach yochum yacha. So he says that if you're taking a cracker and you're putting a fish on it, you have to make a bracha on the cracker and on the fish. That's what the Piskei Teshuvot said. Because he's saying like the Machatzit HaShekel. That's the Ashkenazi halacha. But for us, who follow the Chacham Ovadia and the Yalkut Yosef, that's not the halacha. He says that if you have the cracker and you have the salty fish, but you like the cracker, so you make a mizanot on the cracker, and that covers the fish. Okay? Same story. Same story. According to the Yalkut Yosef, if you're eating the cracker and you enjoy the cracker, then you make a bracha on the cracker and the cheese is patur.
And if you like cheese, then you make.
If you're eating the cheese and you just want the cheese, but you can't eat the cheese without the cracker, so then you make a shagol, and the cracker is covered. Because I don't want the cracker.
So it's not even whatever the ikar is, but
right.
Ashkenazim they separate it.
They're saying they're saying in these cases there are two ikars. They're saying there's two ikars. And each one is filling, each one is important, and therefore we make two brachot. We do say that in some instances, when there's big pieces of meat, meaning it's not something you usually eat on a cracker, right? Like a herring is a small piece of fish, it goes on a cracker. That's it. It goes together. Now the question is, which one's the ikar? If I'm understanding the Yalkut Yosef correctly, and correctly, that's his point. He says, what's the ikar? I have a small piece of fish on a cracker. What's more important here? But if I'm eating crackers with big pieces of meat, right? Oh, so now I'm eating them separately, really, because I'm eating the meat and I'm eating the cracker. It's not that I'm eating them as a combo. When there's a combo, there has to be one ikar and one tav. That's what he seems to be saying.
The burger doesn't work.
The burgers are motzi. That's your combo. Sweet.
The apple thing.
Okay. So what do you do?
No, mazonot does cover big piece of meat.
But it is covering. It's a combo. It's a combo. Okay. We're gonna get into this. Let's see a little more. Okay. Let's see a little more. Now, what about now we're up to our stuffed cabbage. You have the picture on the page. Okay, everybody knows. Dolme. I don't know. You have here oshipyozin, oshitoki. You have all these other foods that you fill them stuffings. Okay, what's the bracha on those stuffings? So uzmanenu, you have stuffed zucchini, stuffed cabbage. You're stuffing it with rice and meat, filled with meat or rice. So you don't make a bracha on the cabbage. You don't make a bracha on the vegetable. It's a tapa. What's the bracha that you do make? On the majority ingredient. So it depends how you make it. If you're using more meat, if you're using more meat than rice, then shahakol. If you're using more rice than meat, then it's mizunot. It's all going to be based on how you make it. Okay? 277, the Yalkut Yosef halacha 8. Stuffed grape leaves contain more rice than meat. Therefore, the rice is the principal, and therefore it's borei minei mizunot. Okay? Page 277, the Yalkut Yosef, halacha 8. Such as the peppers, onions, cabbage, eggplants, all of them. It's all the same din. The main justice eating these foods is the stuffing, and therefore the proper bracha, if it's majority rice, it's borei minei mizunot. Okay? Simple enough. Yeah? Good. Okay. Now we come to everyone's favorite food. Everyone's favorite food is ice cream. What do we do with ice cream? Okay.
How about the ice cream by itself?
We have an ice cream in a sandwich and ice cream in a cone. Okay. I'm going to come outside the Tzurba and we're going to go into the Yalkut Yosef because let's see the halacha inside with ice cream cones and ice cream sandwiches.
Remember we did this Eretz and 5 items.
Yeah. That's going to come up.
How come it's not going?
That's going to come up soon. But let's take a look on page 280 in the Yalkut Yosef. Here he brings Reb Moshe Feinstein, and he just mentions in a little footnote what Chamavadia held. I feel like for us, our duty is to understand our halacha. So, like I said, in this chapter, I felt that Tzurba didn't do us much justice with the Sephardic halacha, but that's why we're here and we have the Yalkut Yosef. So let's take a look. When eating an ice cream sandwich made with cookies, says Chamavadia, one must recite the blessing of Borei Mizanot for the cookie, and the ice cream is covered automatically. The cookies are considered the principal ingredients. That's not the way Piskei Teshuvot would say it. Piskei Teshuvot says both of them I want, right? I want the cookie, it's sweet, and I want the ice cream. I make 2 brachot. Yeah, ice cream sandwich. He makes 2 brachot, according to Ashkenazim. Chamavadia says you want ice cream sandwich. You want ice cream. It comes with ice cream sandwich. You make what bracha? Why mizonot? Why is this? Take a look at the footnote on the bottom. This is the Mishnah Berurah of Gavil you brought up before. Jam that is subordinate to the cookie only if they are baked together. That's the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says only if it's baked together, then it's 1 bracha. It's now considered 1 unit. If the cookie was baked by itself and the jam is spread on it, the jam is not considered a tuffle to the cookie. Therefore, both are independent, requiring 2 separate blessings. So according to Mishnah Berurah, an ice cream sandwich, the cookie is baked differently, the ice cream is made differently. It's 2 berachot.
What's majority? There's not jam is not majority.
But I want both. I want both. I want my ice cream sandwich.
I like more ice cream.
Says Maran Shion Tzion. He says no. He brought from Zalman in the Shulchan Aruch Harav that it makes no difference whether 2 foods are cooked together, baked together, or not. If you like the cookie and the cookie is sweet, like the Magen Avraham said, then you make the bracha on the cookie. Therefore, when eating an ice cream sandwich, one must recite a blessing on the cookie only, and the ice cream is covered automatically. That is the halacha for the ice cream sandwich according to Chamavadia. That what? When you have 2 things, right? It's a combo. It's a sandwich. So you only get 1 bracha. Tell me what's the ikar for the tafel. Oh, apparently you have a nice sweet cookie. It's mizonot. Mizonot takes over the ikar. Oh, ice cream cone or ice cream cake? Ice cream sandwich. No, it's different when it comes to ice cream sandwich. Cone.
So I understood it's both the same, which is if it's sweet, they're becoming an ikar. And if it's not sweet,
yes and no. Yes and no. There's no ice cream sandwich that comes in a non-sweet cookie. But the Metzias, there is none. So therefore, it's always going to be mizonot. Ice cream cones, you have such a thing.
Oh, therefore, if it is sugar which is sweet,
yes,
then it becomes.
Yes. It's the same principle in both, but the Metzias by an ice cream sandwich is always a sweet cookie.
If you were to make it yourself, and it's sweet.
And the cone, I would ice cream cone. I would say shakol or mizanot.
So let's take a look at the cone. Halacha 13.
I ate it for ice cream, not the cone itself.
Okay, so let's see if someone fills an unsweetened cone, like Rav Tzion says, with ice cream. He says shahakol on the ice cream, and the cone is covered automatically, because all that I'm using my cone is to hold the ice cream. It's never meant to be eaten. Nobody really wants to eat the cone. Personally, I like ice cream in a cup, but if you have ice cream in a cone, depends on the cone. And even if some of the cone is left over, I finished all the ice cream and I still have the cone, and I'm going to eat it, I don't make a bracha on that rest of it. The shahakol that I made on the ice cream itself covers the whole thing.
So if my wife makes a ice cream sandwich with non-sweet cracker,
and you don't like the cracker,
then you don't make a bracha.
then you just make a shahak. Then you make a shahakol. That's your anchovy on a cracker. Same din. Okay, very good. If someone eats sugar cone filled ice cream, however, the cone itself is part of the treat. Now it's a sugar cone. So the kids love the sugar cones. Therefore, one of us recite the blessing of Borei Mizanot and take a bite from the cone itself, and the ice cream is covered automatically. You make one bracha. He says to make one bracha on the cone. You take a bite of it on the side. You could do it. You can peel off a little bit, say Mizanot, and that's it. The whole thing's covered. If someone chose to eat the ice cream first, since your dad filled it up way to the sky, right, Yosef? All right, so then what does he do? He says shahakol, and when he reaches the cone, he says a mizonot, because each one is important. But mizonot would cover the shahakol, but you're eating the shahakol first, so you say shahakol. Okay? And then you get to the cone, you make a mizonot, when it's a sugar cone. Okay? When it's a sugar cone. Because apparently people like that sugar cone. And it's something that a person would eat. Okay?
Eat it by itself.
People eat it by itself. It has a mitzias to it. It has a tam to it. Okay? Fine. Now, what about, we'll go back to the Tzurba. He brings down from Moshe Feinstein. What about cereal and milk? I'm eating cereal and milk in the morning. I think in Israel they call all cereals cornflakes. It's like you say cereal, they say cornflakes. Okay, so what happens when you eat a cereal in the morning with milk? Is milk? Did I make a separate bracha on the milk?
No.
Is there a nikah v'tavo?
No, yeah, you just said mezanot or adama, whatever it is.
Depends on what the cereal I'm eating, right? So if I'm eating Cheerios, I'm making mizanot v'zehu, and that's it. That's what you're saying. Let's see what he brings in the Yalkut Yosef here in this discussion over here, page 285 in the Yalkut Yosef, outside of the Tzurba right now. Halacha 16. Most people add milk to breakfast cereal to enhance the flavor of the cereal. Therefore, the milk is subordinate to the cereal and does not require a separate blessing. If some milk is left over after all the cereal is eaten, it is not necessary to recite additional blessing to drink that milk either. Okay? So if you're pouring it, like most people are pouring it in, just to make it a little bit wet, just to make it a little easier to eat, give it a little bit of a flavor, then it is going to be mizonot. You're eating Cheerios, and that's it. What happens now if I throw fruit into my cereal?
So small.
I'm throwing in pieces of banana, pieces of strawberry, pieces of blueberries. Full blueberries. What am I going to do then?
Full blueberries. Fruit.
So what's the story?
Shalem. No, it's because it's full.
Here in the Moshe Feinstein, if you take a look at page 246 in the bottom paragraph, he says over here, peros k'moy bananas, shem chatichos, ein shayachem klal l'disa. They're not nothing to the cereal. You have to make a separate bracha on it, says Rav Moshe. Moshe said you have to make a separate bracha on it. If you take a look at the bottom of the Yalkut Yosef over here, he brings the example of yogurt with fruit, which you can compare also to the cereal with fruit. He ruled the fruit is subordinate to the yogurt. It's there to flavor the yogurt. Then you just say shahako. If someone adds a considerable amount of fruit to his own yogurt, then it might be considered the primary. The same applies to blueberries and sour cream.
Blueberries.
It really depends on why it's there. It really depends why it's there. I'll tell you, when I throw in, I usually throw in blueberries into my Rice Krispies. Although the Rice Krispies box shows strawberries, I like blueberries in my Rice Krispies, and I like bananas in my Cheerios. It's just my preference. But so when I throw in blueberries, I really enjoy the blueberries. I'm not just eating I want both. I really want to eat the Cheerios because I want to get full, but I also like that blueberries in the milk tastes really good. Okay.
But blueberries in and of itself is a whole
is a whole piece, but maybe it's a mixture.
No, it can't be something that's whole.
Why not? If I have whole peas in the rice or couscous or quinoa, I'm making one bracha. It's a mixture of food, even if it's a whole.
is a partial. It's not a
No, it's the whole piece.
piece comes with
Pea in a pot.
Exactly. So it's not all.
No. Even if I throw in,
Chickpea, maybe I can understand, and therefore it's Adam also. It's a whole piece.
it doesn't go by whole piece.
Yeah.
If it's a mixture, it's a mixture. The shalom doesn't make a difference. If I'm eating a shalom piece of cracker on an anchovy, I'm making one bracha. It doesn't make a difference. What's the in ikar? There's a tafel. And what? Me for the blueberries, I make a separate bracha. I'll eat it separate because it's a separate piece. Because
that's why.
not that it's shalom. Is that like Rav Moshe said? Is nothing connected to the cereal? I'm enjoying it separately. No, because you can eat the cereal without the blueberries.
If it be just blueberries, would you eat them?
I might.
You would have to
Yeah,
say
why
a
not?
second bracha.
Say what?
You would have to say a second bracha because you desire the fruit itself.
Right. To me, both of them are ikar. So therefore, I would say a bracha on both. I wouldn't say a bracha on the milk, but I would say a bracha on the blueberry. I would eat it separately and then throw it in and then make them mizanot.
According to what you just said.
They're distinguishable pieces to that extent. They're distinguishable pieces. Say what? Peppers with meat inside, like you're talking like pepper steak.
Stuffed cabbage.
Oh, that one. Yeah. So that's the bracha of the main ingredient on the inside, whatever it is. Usually it's rice. It's going to be mizanot. If it's a majority is meat, it's going to be shakal.
That's why it's secondary.
All right, let's do one more section, and let's see where let's finish up like Tafel, and then next week we'll finish up this volume. Okay, now you come to everyone's favorite schnitzel.
Oh,
okay. There's the question. So I have my chicken, okay, and I'm frying it up, and I'm putting breadcrumbs on it. So what bracha do I make on it? Breadcrumbs on it, all over it. So shahakol. Anytime you have grains, you make mizanot. Remember we said if you're putting the grain for flavor, so mizanot. Which one is it? Rabbi Shmuel Damar Tarvayu Sechus Brachos Kol sheyesh bo mechameshes aminan mevarchen alav bar minei mizanot. That was the Gemara. Anytime you put in the 5 species of grain, you make a mizanot. So what happens to schnitzel now? Okay, so let's take a look in the Yalkut Yosef over here, page 183. Go back to page 183 in the Yalkut Yosef. Breaded chicken on the bottom paragraph over there. You'll see it says breaded chicken. What is the correct blessing for breaded chicken or breaded fish? The Or L'Tzion wrote that if the meat is breaded only to prevent it from sticking to the frying pan. I want to fry my chicken, but if I put it straight, it's going to get stuck. So I put a barrier, I put the breadcrumbs. Then it's shahakol ni'abidvaru. Because the breadcrumbs is not important. It's just there to not make it stick. It's not there to add flavor. It's not there to add a fullness to the person. The Bikat Hashem and Halacha Brura concurred with this ruling. They said, yes, a very thin layer, it's going to be shahakol, stays the way it is. Halacha Brura says, if it's a thick layer, then it's added to the flavor of the meat. Okay. Then it becomes borei minei mizanot. So your schnitzel with a thick bread over it is going to be mizanot. The Yalkut Yosef in the Hebrew edition said schnitzel is shakul yemidvaru, and he didn't make a difference between thick or thin. However, he says over here, today you find in the market breading mixtures that are made especially for these foods with spices and flavors and texture. You like the way it feels and tastes and all that. It would seem that if a person is using dafka, these breadcrumbs, to make a borei minei mizonot, because he wants those there. He really likes those there. So, and it's there for the flavor. So
what makes the distinction between a flavor and therefore it's mizonot, or not flavored and therefore chakol?
What he says, because if it's there for flavor, it becomes mizonot. If you like the flavor, you make mizonot.
It's not flavors, what is it for? It's not flavor. What is it?
Now, there's another opinion, and this is now, you can take a look in the Tzurba, the Shevet HaLevi on page 248. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. Schnitzel could be mizonot. The only time we say if you add grains, it becomes mizonot, is if you add grain to the main part of the food, not as a coating. says Rav Wozner. A coating, that's never going to become mizonot. It's just a coating. If you put it into the main food and you're putting it there, that's when it becomes mizonot. So Rav Wozner goes with that idea. Then he says that you can never get schnitzel that's mizonot. You can't, because a coating is just a coating. It's not in the food itself. It's not part of the food itself.
Okay, what about?
It doesn't matter the thickness either.
According to Rav Wozner, yeah, it doesn't make a difference. In conclusion, says the Yalkut Yosef, what to do? Page 184, conclusion. Someone breads chicken or fish only for the purpose of preventing it from sticking to the frying pan, no question is shakol. If someone adds bread to add flavor, but it's thin, you should still say shahakol. If he uses a thick layer, then it's probably bodem and mizonot. However, in both of these last cases, if you're using it for flavor or you're using it for thick, it's best to avoid this machloket, and he should make amotzi, like Rav Sion said, or he should take one shahakol and one mizonot food and then eat that. Okay, so if it's for flavor or if it's thick, the best thing is to make a hamotzi on bread and then eat it, or to eat the shahakol food and the mizonot food and then eat that.
Yeah, both scenarios.
Take a bread, make a hamotzi, and then eat the schnitzel. So this way you stay out of the mahloket. So it is the mahloket what schnitzel is, depending on what type of schnitzel is made. Okay?
If you made charcoal, it's good. You made mezonot, it's good. You made hamotzi.
If it's thin. Okay, so most regular takeout and stuff like that, they're not making thick layers. It's thin layers, and you're going. Those are shahakol. So most times your wife is making it at home, it's going to be shahakol because she's not using a lot of special breadcrumbs. When Rabbi Yosef here takes out his special flavor, texture, thick breadcrumbs, and he puts them on the chicken, and he flips them this way, that way, and it comes out thick and flavorful. So then it's maybe mizonot. So therefore you should make hamotzi beforehand, or make a mizonot and shahakol on two other foods and then eat that food. So that's not
The way they make it in the commissaries, commercial areas, if they make a thin batter, they put eggs and flour with the chicken, then they stick it onto the breadcrumbs. So it makes it somewhat crispy. But then if they want to make it a second layer, second coating, after they put it into the breadcrumbs, they put it back into the egg and then put another layer of breadcrumbs. So then it makes it fairly thick. So the only one is saying that it's only shahakol.
That's definitely shahak. Okay. Couscous. The kibbeh. What bracha you make on them? Mizonot. Because kibbeh is a meat stuffed inside, but it's what's it called? It's in a thick dough around it. So then it's definitely going to be mizonot. Yeah, that's the kibbeh on the bottom. Okay. Yeah. In the olden days, you tell someone you're Sephardi, right? They say, "Oh, so you eat kibbeh?" I'm like, "No, I'm not that Sephardi." Right? But different Sephardi. Right? You're buying them from the Ashkenazic store. Don't buy them from there. They were selling them in gourmet glats. My wife got them. They're not real kibbeh. They're gourmet glats kibbeh. Okay. All right. Now we're going to come. Penina Halacha talks about halacha, and Rabbi Tzion's going to tell us what this is because we have no idea what this is. But they call them botnim Amerikaim. What it means?
The peanuts that are made with